All right, hopefully we are back. Um, so yeah, I mean that kind of sucks because I went pretty far down the path for like the Chat GPT stuff and all of that. Um, but I don't know, like it's kind of hard to justify spending too much time. It's kind of hard to justify spending too much time going over it again. I don't know. It's all good. Um, I think it was something that happened to OBS, if I'm completely honest. But yeah, no, the main point that I kind of wanted to make um, from the example, like, so I gave my examples of humor from 1984, and there's a little bit about Animal Farm in there. But I think the main point that I kind of wanted to make, I'm just syncing Cyberpunk 2077, but we'll jump into that as soon as possible. Um, but the thing about reading is it's not just like a direct transmission of like ideas into a brain. Like in the sense that if you read a summary of the story, there is some information that is being conveyed, but it is not necessarily the same as reading the story. And the example, I'm hoping some of this came across, but like basically I opened up the kind of co-pilot for Bing, and it like just straight up froze when it came to answering the question, are there funny parts in 1984? Originally it said, like I think I'd asked it something like, is 1984 funny? And it's like, no, it's a very serious book for very serious people. I'm like, okay, well, you know what, that's fair that maybe it didn't give what I thought was a consistent answer. An answer that's consistent with the content of the book, because most people would not consider 1984 humorous, but there is humor in that book. And in fact, it's one of the ways that you can tell whether or not somebody's read it, is to identify that, someone who can identify that humor. Whereas if you ask someone, is 1984 about totalitarianism? Everyone's going to say that. It's about a lot more than that. But, it is fair to say that's a consensus view, and it's one that people are not going to object to. But, again, it's one of these things where if what you're looking for is knowledge, you have to do the work. Whereas, if you're looking for a summary, Google search, Bing search, the Bing chat, Spark Notes, Cliff Notes, Wikipedia. There's lots of different ways that you can get, the basics. But these are fundamentally different activities, right? One, there's something about reading 1984, and then there's something about having it summarized for you. And the drawback I give is that most of the stuff I talk about tends to sort of fall into the realm of, literature. The sort of highfalutin stuff, which you tend to want to read in summary because maybe, I mean, not to suggest that 1984 is like hoity-toity, right? Like, but like the idea here is like a lot of this is stuff that you're kind of asked to read in high school or middle school or whatever. Like a lot of this stuff you get exposed to as part of a lesson, and so you have plenty of reasons not to like really engage with it, right? But if you think about sort of the favorite books that you've read, It was more than just getting a plot. Like, you read that for reasons other than getting a plot summary. You wanted to feel something, have a particular kind of experience reading that story. And I mean, again, I fully acknowledge that, like, reading is a bit less fashionable in certain circles than it used to be. I mean, you've got the, the Sam Bankman-Fried types who are, if you what is it? Like, if you wrote a book, you fucked up. You're supposed, if you wrote a book, you should have given me the blog post. If you gave me the blog post, you're supposed to give me the tweet. And it's like, okay, fine, right? You're very wealthy and you're obviously smarter than everyone else because you're wealthy, and dummies like me read books to know that that's a criticism as old as Thales and the example of the olive presses, and showing that philosophers console themselves with knowledge of the world and not material goods. And I'm just wasting my time reading this stuff, whereas you're continually doing stupid things while waiting for your trial. And look, I mean, it's not my place to tell people. I mean, you've a limited amount of time in the world, right? If you don't like reading, I don't know if somebody like me, wagging their finger telling you it's a really good idea to read a book every once in a while, and that maybe the inefficiency of reading is kind of the point, and it gives you something different. But I don't know, like, you get to enjoy, like, well, number one, reading stuff lets you be a bigger pervert. You just get to find out about more crazy stuff, right? But number two, right, like, if you play in a Cyberpunk, right, being able to understand, like, there's just something really nice if if all you know about Cyberpunk basically comes from the role-playing game, you're going to enjoy this game. If what you know about Cyberpunk comes from I don't really have a place to put the body, but yeah, like, if it's like Cyberpunk and Shadowrun, okay, obviously this is indicating that probably you're a big fan of RPGs. And, like, the fact of the matter is, if you're a fan of tabletop RPGs, you're probably a reader, right? And one of the really important things about the Shadowrun example in particular is, for Jordan Weissman, he gives the example that he was dyslexic, and in fact playing role-playing games was the way that he was able to go from reading being this, like, physically painful thing to, like, giving him a reason to really want to, like, read those books and, like, be able to get it, because of all these, like, wonderful experiences and these things. Like, there was, like, a payoff at the end of it, and that was what allowed him to that was what allowed him to that's something we can toss him in. I think there's a lot of value in recognizing that stuff, right? Like, again, it's not about like, I'm not expecting, if you're not reading Proust, you're reading wrong, right? There's lots of different ways that you can engage with this sort of stuff. But again, like, if all that you know about Cyberpunk is Shadowrun and Cyberpunk 2077, it's more than if you're just familiar with if you're just familiar through the video game. It's more than if you're, let's say, only familiar from the one tabletop RPG. But there's still more there, right? You know, he could be like, okay, well, but I've also read Neuromancer. Okay, well, now you're getting kind of closer to the source material. But you can get even more if you know that Gibson is sort of, as far as what, you know, he thought he was doing, he's sort of following in the footsteps of William S. Burroughs. Now, I'm going to guess that most people are not going to say, you know, Naked Lunch or Junkie or something like that are, you know, the first things that you would think of when it comes to thinking about the cyberpunk genre. Oh, crap. Damn it! I'm going to lose a lot of progress if I... Oh, come on. I was out of stamina. But yeah, I mean, like, once you sort of appreciate that context, you know, your horizons go even broader, right? And that's a good thing. It basically allows you to take a game like this and to get even more out of the experience than you would have appreciating it just as an adaptation of a role-playing game. And it's not to suggest that the other experiences are lesser experiences. But what it means is that you are able to enhance your enjoyment of a thing that you already like by being familiar with some of the, you know, some of the context. And again, I am once again sort of speaking to my own interests here, right? I like getting into more in-depth stuff. How you doing, Vanguard Master? And so being able to sort of analyze, like, you know, I think in the grand scheme of things, right? Like, what would I want above all? You know, probably the one thing I'd really like for Cyberpunk 2077 is I want to know what was on Mike Pondsmith's bookshelf while he was writing Cyberpunk 2020, I guess. Yeah, and like, you could say this for a lot of people, right? If you got a favorite philosopher, you know, what did Kierkegaard have on his bookshelf, you know, while he was writing Either or something? But, you know, that sort of stuff I think is really interesting, and it can lead to a better appreciation of something which, again, you may already find very enjoyable on its own. But, I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I've done some variation on the, you know, what was so-and-so reading at the time they made this thing that I really like.
No, it doesn't shoot, doesn't turn, doesn't do fuck all.
And, I've walked away with a greater appreciation of this thing that I liked. Like, the best example I can give in terms of gaming is knowing that Mass Effect was inspired by Starflight. And I would argue that all three games I gained a greater appreciation of by that one bit of knowledge alone. Do I think it's essential knowledge for, you know, somebody who enjoys Mass Effect? No. Mass Effect is perfectly enjoyable without necessarily considering the earlier EA game. Yes, it does look like there were some tech problems before. Yeah, I'd been streaming for about an hour and a half, but what seems to have happened was, for one reason or another, something got interrupted between something got interrupted between something happened between, I don't know, switching from just chatting to Cyberpunk or something, and I lost a bunch of chat. I mean, it's stuff that I've talked about before, but it's always annoying to, you know, to have to lose an interesting discussion. Well, I thought interesting discussion. The one thing that does worry me is the last time something like that happened, it was actually the indicator that I had, like, been given a ban for reading the history book. It was actually one of the reasons why I took the time to it's one of the reasons I took the time to switch to just chatting. It's like, okay, this is obviously like moving to read this one. Okay, I think we've read most of these, or at least we have the gist of these, so I'm going to skip over them. But I'm hoping that's not what the story was. Yeah, well, that's the like. There's 100 ways to interpret "uh-oh," right? In the case where I read the "uh-oh," it was ChatGPT, or not ChatGPT. The Bing chat had like basically not given a reply. Like it thought a long time and then didn't do anything. So the connection that I was making was not necessarily the one that you'd intended. So I kind of kept talking, and then effectively what happened was I was trying to switch back into the game. I saw the view count was 0, and I noticed that when I was trying to I think I wasted the invisibility here. When I was trying to go back to Cyberpunk, the browser window was still up, which obviously is not convenient. So yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but these things happen. Actually, that came up, Vanguard Master. I shouldn't call it ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is a different product. ChatGPT is the product by OpenAI, whereas the Bing Chat is it is, I believe, still from OpenAI, but it's a specific Microsoft implementation of that technology. That's not going to work for me. Gotta find a place to dump them. But yeah, anyways, so the funny thing about your comment, Vanguard Master, is somebody, like every once in a while, I'll stop by in the Phantom Brigade Steam chat just to kind of see how it's going. Like, the problem with stuff like that is I actually find the information transfer is very low. You know, when you've got some guy going in, "Blah, you're boring, I'm not watching." It's like, okay, like, what am I supposed to do with this? Right, you know, the client was happy. You know, obviously some people sought out the stream as a result of, you know, this boring broadcast. What is the thing I do to someone who says I'm out? But what I did find funny was like those are just more funny, more than anything. But what I did find kind of interesting was... Oh, they're going to look right at me. I blew that. Might be able to recover it, though. No, that's gonna...
Same thing, Kane.
Clear them out quick. Alright, that was sloppy, but we got through. But yeah, anyways. What I did find kind of funny was that when I would say hi to people, someone would say, "Are you an AI?" To which I have to say, it's like, no, I'm a real person. And then, like, I just kind of needed to think a little bit. It's like, well, that's what an AI would say. So I just had to add a quick afterwards, or at least a sophisticated enough AI to to write this, which I noticed people. Oh, I screwed up already. All right, 7A 55 BD. There we go. But yeah, anyways, it is kind of funny now that everybody, like, the effect of these things, and again, it's obviously not just the headline grabbing stuff, but we're now at a point where if you're engaged in some kind of a commercial context, people are actually trying to determine whether or not you are in fact a real person, which I suppose is a very cyberpunk kind of idea. It's a bit of a shame, right? Like, obviously, it's nice to feel like authenticity is a nice thing, right? It would be nice if you could feel like, you might be dealing with some kind of a developer broadcast or something like that, but oh, I saw something they didn't like. Damn it!
Carry you personally.
There's got to be a sniper up there. Oh, that's right. I didn't turn off the cameras. That was in a different run. All right, we'll clear the place out. And then...
Meeny, miny, moe. Catch a tiger, kill it slow.
There's nothing to be shy about.
Oh, that was ineffective.
What a clusterfuck! We're not gonna make it. I can't deal with this.
The music definitely gets better when you're fighting, so maybe I should do this more often.
Gotta up our game.
Might be able to ricochet. Okay, so the point of this was to get the high ground on... Is the camera looking at me somewhere? Oh, right here.
I don't want to go like this.
We can make it a fair fight. Alright, well that was educational. So now I'm going to go back down. Obviously we need to be heading up here, but I want to head down to all those floors and make sure that I can get all the loot. But yeah, I mean, again, I think I've talked about this. Like, it's like reading the teacher reviews, right? If you just focus on the good stuff, you're not going to learn anything, right? And I had some very, very nice comments on my. Oh, hang on, I'm recording something. I had some very nice comments on my teaching reviews, but if you just do that, like, those are nice if you need to pick me up. It's never a bad thing to feel appreciated, but if you only focus on that, you're not necessarily going to be looking at the stuff that will allow you to improve. Likewise, and certainly I am definitely very prone to melancholy, I am definitely going to obsess about the negative stuff. And there are some people who were never going to write something positive, and it may not even be about you. It's not even a personality conflict thing. It's they were not going to do well in that course, or maybe they're just mad that they have to be in school, right? There's a lot of people who are in school just because their parents want them to be. And the TA review is a way that they can exercise that demon, or try to, at least. I don't think that really helps them. You're a public figure, Elgrins? I didn't know this. But yeah, so probably the bigger danger for me is not. There's obviously some people who. There are some people who have a fairly low opinion of me and definitely consider me to be quite. Being one. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. There's definitely a few people who consider me quite arrogant, and like I said, I definitely do tend to be a little too reflective on stuff that may not be said with the best of intentions. So it is something that I sometimes get a little worried about. I'm also kind of conscious of the fact that for someone like me, one of the easiest ways to sort of discredit them is to accuse them of elitism, because nobody likes an elitist, and I have weird tastes that kind of skew that way. But I'm not going to pretend I'm not I'm someone else, right? I do genuinely find this stuff interesting. And, I'm not entirely sure it's the best thing in the world to change the way you live your life to, accommodate someone's interest, particularly when that someone doesn't have your best interests at heart. But yeah, what you want to do is you want to trim off the best, trim off the worst, and sort of look for that median comment. And it probably won't surprise you to know that they thought that maybe my analogies went on a little too long, which is fair. I mean, I sometimes feel that people didn't fully appreciate what the analogies were doing, and I did get to see people's exams and see... I could tell who was in my class even if I didn't look at the names, because the answers that they gave always used the weird examples that I would give. Analogies are a really, really, really helpful way to think about things. I think they are a significantly underappreciated tool for gaining understanding. But again, if people don't appreciate, if people just think I'm given a funny story to be the cool TA, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be walking away with the knowledge. And so that's a problem, right? That's still a lesson in terms of how I come across and where things need to improve. But yeah, so similarly for the Steam stuff, the ones I'm actually most interested in are the people who are confused by things, people who are asking questions that I feel are already covered in the video, and it's clear that they're not getting what I'm trying to convey. Those are the things that really help me understand. But yeah, if it's somebody who's like, I'm out, this is boring, it's okay, well, I've actually taken a look. There's one who keeps coming back to say that. They're my new biggest fan, I've noticed. But the other one that I find really interesting is there are a lot of people who say that who have a lot of time in Counter-Strike, which makes me think that they're looking at the trailers for Phantom Brigade and are thinking that it's an action game and not realizing it's a strategy game. And I mean, for that stuff, there's a reason why Brace Yourself was happy with it and why those people aren't happy about it. There's nothing I can do about that because ultimately they want a game that isn't there. And the other thing too is that my job on those videos is not to entertain. That's fair that it shows up on a lot of accounts, but time spent isn't free, right? Time spent in Counter-Strike is time you're not spending in another video game. So if these are people who are playing that game for sure, and that is the primary game that they play. I want to be as entertaining as I can in a video like that, but that's not the main point of a video like that. The main point of a video like that is to show what the game is like. So, anyways, how to disassemble a drone and how not to piss me the fuck off. 1, don't fucking force it. If it won't unscrew, leave it. 2, stay the fuck away from sand. Sand plus electronics equals shit. Shit does not equal money. Got it? If you can't work a soldering iron, don't touch it. 4, do not leave batteries in the fucking sun. I fucking appreciate it. Thanks. Alright, well. Virus. Virus attached, easy to use. Insert shard in the control panel for the antenna transmitter and begin transmission on all channels. If this is impossible, the virus will be sent one by one on each frequency in the cycle. The virus will only unpack in the drones you specify, cutting power to propulsion. Any problems, just holler. Vanguard Master, I have a Canadian Forces question for you. This actually isn't even just a Canadian Forces question. This is a general military question. More of an admiral question, really. What's the feeling on the village people? I'm sorry, that's a really obvious one. I was sitting on that for a while, where he thought is like, I am free of the obvious reference to that song that everybody keeps bringing up. But no. It was a stealth one. That is privileged information. Well done. Need to know basis. Not just top secret, one of the secret classifications that is so secret its existence isn't even known. I'm assuming that's more than a World War II thing. Okay, I really blew this. Oh, damn it! I did not think that through at all. That's fine. I live with my mistakes mostly. If they're game losing mistakes, then I go back. Wait a minute. So I did use this? Huh. Okay. Well, lessons learned. At least until the next round. One other thing, actually, Vanguard can probably appreciate this. One thing I tend to notice, this will be sort of related to the idea of just broader horizons and whether, like again, it's not a prerequisite for it having a fulfilling life, right? I think it's debatable as to whether or not I am living an ideal life, or anything even approximating that. and people are going to have their own given interests. But one of the things I do find kind of interesting is the wider reading definitely helps when you're trying to generate ideas. And actually, one of the weird things I notice. Sorry, I'm just gonna read this. Problem, boss, we got a problem. Either our supplies evaporating into thin air or someone's skimming off the top. Question is whether it's for personal use or for side biz. Either way, someone needs to handle this. One of the things I find kind of neat is, so like, think about Cyberpunk, right? Very popular genre, and like not even just because of Cyberpunk 2077. Generally, stuff with Cyberpunk aesthetics does well. So, you got Cyberpunk 2077, but you've also got The Ascent. You've got obviously there was a Blade Runner game. Indies really like it. So Spinortality. There was sorry, not Nivalis. It took place in Nivalis. Nivalis is an upcoming game. God, what was it? It was the taxi driving one. And I'm not talking about NeoCab. I'm the one with the dog. I really liked it. Why can't I? Cloudpunk. Like even with the presence of like the most AAA of AAA games as potential competition, did not deter people from returning to this aesthetic and returning to these themes. In fact, arguably one of the problems with...
You'd think every smartass would have encrypted their comms by now. Anyway, what's the message say?
Raffenschiff bought a virus and they're broadcasting it around by an aerial transmitter.
Wasn't there an antenna around here?
Uh-huh. Not for much longer it won't be.
I'm debating... So I'm assuming I can probably just shoot this thing, but I'm debating on leveling up my skills. How many points do I have? 10? Yeah, we can work on that. But like to a certain extent too, you have very similar stories being told over and over again, right? And it's not even that these stories can't be interesting, but I also think that, for me at least, I sometimes find being able to take a very commonly done idea and just take that off to a slight... just a slightly different direction can be an interesting one too. So for instance, like there's a lot of ideas that I think are really interesting in Cyberpunk that don't get enough time, even though, let's say, the source material actually spent some time on it. So for instance, I've yet to see an example of someone doing a campaign based around a media. Now, in fairness, I'm not exactly hooked into the the tabletop community, but like this is something I've never heard of, even though there is like a template for such a character in at least the 2020 manual. And I would argue that this is probably a story that's even more relevant today.
Nice work on that antenna. The tricky part of having a head is knowing how to use it, but not for you, King. Mosquito's roots are safe and secure again. The contract is closed, and closed well.
On top of that, you actually have sort of cyberpunkish stories which would fall within sort of that example. So I think it would be fair to say Transmetropolitan probably is a good example of a cyberpunk story which would have a media as a central character. Another example of this, this comes up a lot in the game, But I don't see... Trauma Team I actually also find fascinating. And I don't know how often that comes up. But I could definitely imagine a sort of a Trauma Team-oriented campaign. But maybe another example of this sort of thing would be... there's a lot of references to the wars in Cyberpunk. But you can almost imagine there being like a really rewarding kind of, maybe not a campaign, but like definitely you could see how something more military focused, you know, specifically thinking about how, like, so when you have these sort of criminal and hacker characters in Cyberpunk, that's a very different type of engagement and very different type of mission than you might think of when you're, you know, when you're dealing with military engagements. And even then, right, like you could take a cyberpunkish sort of story, and you could have some sort of special ops team, like somebody who is doing something that's very similar to what you might have as an edge runner. The difference here, of course, is that you're working in an environment which is quite a bit more oriented towards sort of following rules and a much more rigid structure. And so that's an opportunity to sort of go to a lesser explored part of what would otherwise be a very familiar world. One of the things that I noticed about a few game jams that I went to, it was a really interesting comment from sort of a local developer, where he says, like, you always have political ideas, but like not political in the way everybody thinks. It's always like on the mechanics of politics. And I'm like, yeah, because I find that really interesting, and I don't think, like, I mean, this also is reflecting my academic background, right? Like, I did political economy, and that is very much focused on, you know, how does politics have an influence on, you know, all of the other things that you would normally study inside of Cyberpunk. It's actually a fascinating subject if you have a mind for it. But I almost walked right into a discovery. Like, so one of the prompts from the past global game jams was running out of power. And one of the things I usually like to do with prompts like that is there's the first few obvious, like, so I think you know, if you haven't done this yet, remember that the global game jam is I think like a 48-hour, like make a game in 48 hours, and you know, you're not required to do the prompt, but the prompt is sort of intended to sort of get you thinking about the type of game that you want to make. And if you haven't put some thought into it, I think it would be fair to
You stepped in it now.
Someone take that position!
Get him!
I have the worst luck in terms of people. This is going to blow up. I have the worst luck of people turning around at the last minute. I hope they didn't kill the owner.
No more fucking around!
Owner still got his hands up. Archive conversation. Merlin Honorati and Logan Smith. Third engine this month. Can't be a fucking coincidence. Where'd you fill up? The fuck's that got to do with it? Just tell me where you stopped for Chew. That guy by the dump. Check and see if he's not watering down the fuel. Could be it. Alright, we're there. Fuck, Gonk straight admitted it. We'll hang around, take out any unsuspecting clientele. First good idea you had.
Thanks, stranger. That was a close one.
Can't dispense justice to the fuel waterer downer. But yeah, so obviously got interrupted by the firefight, but I'm assuming at this point some of you've probably got some ideas, you know, knowing that the Global Game Jam is about a 48-hour, you know, game idea potentially based off of that prompt. V, I have a gecko for sale. The Nomad take on a Galena. Solid machine, but I have to warn you, it's a little bare on the inside. By that, I mean no cup holder, LED screen, tush warmer, or other gimmicks. That being said, on rough terrain, this thing is smoother than looks give it credit. You'll be sailing over every dune and rocky slope. If you're strapping yourself in for a longer haul, it will practically pay for itself. Yeah. Not to cast aspersions on anybody's imagination here, but I'm willing to guess that when you heard the prompt running out of power, probably the first game idea you had was something along the lines of a robot with a battery. And, you know, you have to do something where you'll like recharge the battery, or you'll have to, you know, do some variation on that. And, you know, I'm not going to claim that everybody thinks that. But it's like, it's hard not to think of something like that when you're given a prompt along those lines. Like, it's just a very natural follow-up to a prompt along those lines. And what I tend to find is most rewarding is if you can move past an initial response like that, right? And you start unpacking it. Like I said, I tend to like coming up with the off the beaten track kind of an idea. And that can be a trap in and of itself, right? Novelty for its own sake isn't necessarily the way to go. But you know, we might as well put the mod in. Once you sort of force yourself to try and think a little bit outside of the immediate and obvious. By the way, I'd love to hear any of you who, you know, some of the ideas you came up with, including if it was the robot one, right? Like, there's a reason why people think of it. But the thing I kind of like thinking about this is, like, what are other ways of thinking about this particular prompt without necessarily reaching for the first or obvious interpretation of it. And so the one that I thought of immediately after the robot power version was lame duck session. That essentially you are you're a politician in the lame duck session. You're trying to pass your legacy, right? In this case, the clever bit is the inversion on the term power. Again, like, if it's not an idea that speaks to you, or it doesn't lend itself towards mechanics or things along those lines, trying to be clever like that doesn't get you anything. And yet, I would suggest that there aren't a lot of very good political games out there. And more importantly, when it is a political game, it's generally one which is about you being in charge and being able to do everything that you want. Basically, the exercise of power. And so running out of power, this idea of trying to pass a legacy at a time when the other branches of government are not necessarily going to be very amenable to your ideas. This has a lot more to do with the actual practice of politics. And so as a consequence, I just think is a potentially more interesting subject for a game, and one that's maybe a little bit truer to the subject. It's a game I haven't seen, and it's one that is able to take the prompt in an interesting place. And what I tend to find is that ideas like that are sort of sitting all over the place, just waiting for somebody to pick it up and move on with it. So, you know, again, like there's a lot of, I think the original, so actually, first of all, let me just verify. I have a feeling I've either talked myself to an empty channel or I may be having technical problems again. So I'm just going to take a quick check to make sure that. Okay, cool. I'm talking to just failing to do my job rather than to entertain. Okay, thank you, Vanguard Master. I think the actual origins of SimCity came from Will Wright designing like a helicopter game and finding that the process of actually making the levels for the helicopter game was more fun than the helicopter game. And so from that, you know, you get SimCity, which I like. I kind of want that story to be true, even if it's not. But the funny thing is that there's actually a really got the Eddies. You made the right choice today, V. So we're gonna head back to the Badlands and do some more work. You don't actually need to make a helicopter game to have the insight as to why SimCity is a good idea. One of the ways that you can... Hang on, I screwed up. I don't know how long I've been listening to copyrighted music. The insight you need for SimCity or City Skylines, or you know whichever city builder you choose, is to the insight that you need is to take a look at how people behave outside construction sites. There are a few things that you know you're kind of guaranteed to see people respond to, right? The woman in the red dress in Dawn of Man, please. There's a game called Ancestors. Is that the sort of thing you're thinking of, or are you thinking of like the types of games you want to see? When you what I mean by the woman in the red dress, like this Matrix reference, where you have you know, an attractive woman walking by at the time when you should be paying attention to something else. One of the things I always thought was so funny was I had this friend in Kelowna, and you know, certainly no problem with women. Probably problem with women, but like definitely did not have trouble getting a date. What I found so interesting though is like when I would talk with him, I would quite literally see his eye line just go like from woman to woman as I'm talking to him. Like his focus so clearly was not paying attention to what I was saying or me. Which again, fine. Like I don't like captive audiences, so if he had something more interesting, you know, that's his business. Definitely made me not want to be someone like that because I was actually kind of disgusted with him. It was just sort of like, come on, you know, these are people, right? Like they're not just eye candy. No, it's a city building game. It's kind of like Banished, but with some combat, set in the Neolithic and advancing through the ages to the Iron Age. That's really interesting, especially too because one of the things I find so interesting about games like that is that the historical experience was these very long periods where things didn't change. And so I wonder if there's something that you can do about a game like that where like obviously you want progress in a game, but is there a way of reflecting the total lack of progress that we made for history for such a long time? Because like every game from like Civ, well actually Civ does this nice thing where they sort of like, you have very like turns take many more years at the start than at the end, and that's kind of how they handle that. But But I wonder if there's a way to sort of characterize the relative lack of progress of humanity while still making an interesting game. Yeah, anyway, sorry, Vanguard Mass. I was looking for that clarification, and I totally got sidetracked. But yeah, like I was just gonna say, like the other thing that's so again, men being men, the one thing that you're sort of guaranteed to sort of see people like get distracted and like immediately sort of move their attention for is a beautiful woman walking by, or someone they find attractive. But the other one I tend to notice is construction. Like if you just stay by a construction site and watch people, like people really do seem to find construction really interesting. And you can see why. Like it's about potential, right? It's probably the same reason some people like buying luggage, or empty notebooks. It's all about the potential and the thing that it might become. But yeah, like, you don't need to be the person making the helicopter game and realizing it's more fun to build, to like design the map, to have the insight that you might be onto something with SimCity. All you really need to do is take a look at how people behave outside of construction sites. But again, that's an obvious idea that people didn't follow up on. Did I just suddenly lose all of my... Oh no, it's Mark II bounce back. That's why. Oh, hang on to that. But yeah, like, there's another one that I was thinking of. I was talking about that, but it's escaped me. I'll take a second to see if I can recall it, but. Oh yeah, actually, this is me talking my book here, but this is another one. I had an example. I'm gonna go to Wikipedia for a second here, just so I can get the exact details. Also, I want to take a quick look. Okay, so here's another example of like, well, one of this is part of this is the power of analogy. Part of this is just going one step away from something that's very common and ordinary. So, how interesting. Today's featured Wikipedia article is Starship Troopers, a 1959 military science fiction novel by Robert Heinlein. The first-person narrative follows Juan Johnny Rico through his military service in the mobile infantry, most of which takes place during an interstellar war between humans and an alien species known as arachnids or bugs. Interspersed with the primary plot are classroom scenes in which Rico and the others discuss philosophical and moral issues, including aspects of suffrage, restricted in Rico's society, civic virtue, juvenile delinquency, and war. These discussions have been described as expounding Heinlein's own political views. A coming-of-age novel, Starship Troopers also critiques the U.S. society of the 1950s, arguing that a lack of discipline has led to moral decline. Starship Troopers brought to an end Heinlein's juvenile novel series. It became one of his best-selling books and won the Hugo Award for Best Novel. The story has been adapted several times, including a 1997 film version. What I was actually trying to look for was the discussion, or well, not the discussion, but some of the ideas from Old World, The Sacred and the Profane, have got me reading some old like Neoplatonist and Gnostic texts. So as you can tell, like weekends are just off the hook in my apartment. But one of the things, so there's a cyberpunk connection to this as well. Gnosticism seems to be this really weird, like, fountain of ideas for cool science fiction. Like, Philip K. Dick for sure. But also, I am convinced that the MTV Liquid, I think it was, there's this, like, old cartoon, very experimental, called Aeon Flux, and I realized that there was a motion picture made. It's actually really hard to find the cartoon. I've not seen the cartoon in its entirety. I'm just aware of it. I'd like to see it. But Yeah, Aeon Flux is like almost certainly has Gnostic references to it, and it's like, I think probably it would be fair to say like it's bordering on Cyberpunk on a few in a few ways. But like the concept of the Aeon and the Flux, I believe, are both there. But like both Gnosticism and Neoplatonism had this idea of the demiurge. So I wanted to bring up the so here's what I'll do. I'll read the entries. I'll read the entries as they are here. So concepts, the monad. In many Gnostic systems, God is known as the monad, the one. God is the high source of the pleroma, the region of light. The various emanations of God are called aeons. According to Hippolytus, this view was inspired by the Pythagoreans, who called the first thing that came into existence the monad, which begat the dyad, which begat the numbers, which begat the point, begetting lines, etc. Pythagoras was more than just the relationship, right-angled triangles, sides to each other. He had a math club. The first rule of math club is you don't talk about math club, and then there was something about not eating beans. The gift of Sri Chaitanya, I'm sorry, I'm so bad at pronouncing this stuff. Aegis Zandir. Mahaprabhu explains Gadaya Vaishnavism, and I love it. Okay, now I'm going to have to put that one up here. Now we've got our new Old World expansion here. I have to assume that this is Hindu, or something related to the region at least. Because I'm gonna have to disappoint you here, because I was actually about to make a really, really silly point about the demiurge, but again, like I was going from Old World, and the Sacred and Profane has Ammonius Saccas and Plotinus inside. I have to admit I'm very poorly read on pretty much anything coming from the subcontinent, and I should feel very bad about that. But yeah, so anyways, wanted to first talk about the mod. Any of you who are familiar with the idea of the forms kind of know where this is going, right? You have the good, and then the forms, and then you keep kind of going down until you get material existence. But where I wanted to go from this was the demiurge. So, and there's a main Wikipedia article, but I'm assuming the summary in the Gnostic entry will be enough. The term demiurge derives from the Latinized form of the Greek term demiurgos, literally public or skilled worker. This figure is also called, oh God, I'm bad at this, Yaldabaoth, or Saklas, which translates either to blind god or the foolish one, who is sometimes ignorant of the superior god and sometimes opposed to it. Thus, in the latter case, he is correspondingly malevolent. Other names or identifications are Ahriman, El, Satan, and Yahweh. The demiurge creates the physical universe and the physical aspects of humanity. The demiurge typically creates a group of co-actors named archons who preside over the material realm and in some cases present obstacles to the soul seeking ascent from it. The inferiority of the demiurge's creation may be compared to the technical inferiority of a work of art, painting, sculpture, etc., the thing the art represents. In other cases, it takes on a more ascetic tendency to view material existence negatively, which then becomes more extreme with materiality, including the human body is perceived as evil and constrictive, a deliberate prison for its inhabitants. Moral judgments of the demiurge vary from group to group within the broad category of Gnosticism, viewing materiality as being inherently evil or as merely flawed as good as its passive constituent matter allows. So things like Manichaeism, and definitely I think there's a suggestion that Ammonius Saccas, who would later sort of become a big influence on Neoplatonism, would be a really good example of ideas from Buddhism and similar traditions sort of traveling and informing Western philosophy. And there's like a whole sort of both debate but also branch of research in terms of figuring out these sorts of influences each other. That's okay. It's fairly recent, and that's why the Renaissance happened. There was a film that I was referring to. Oh, The Gift of... Oh, gotcha. Okay. Thank you for the clarification, because I'm always looking for cool references or things to pick up. But anyways, this is a massive scaffolding for... So, depending on whether... I'm just going to I'm going to limit this to Gnosticism and Neoplatonism. So there's one idea which would say, you can't have something like the demiurge being an emanation from the one, because it sort of implies some level of imperfection from the monad, and this is a bad thing. And then, of course, I think a more Gnostic perspective would be that there is the demiurge, and it may be a malevolent thing, it may not be a malevolent thing. But I actually like to go a slightly different direction with it, and it'll be ridiculous, and some people take these ideas very seriously, so I don't necessarily want to be too disrespectful of it. And yet I cannot think of the demiurge, and particularly the way... Obviously, you can get a hint from those descriptions as this being, a very... I mean, you can see why this would be appealing to someone like me, right? Very much focused on the world of ideas, not very focused on the physical world. But I love this idea of the demiurge as basically the equivalent of like a game designer or any other expert nowadays who has to listen to everyone's opinions about what could have been done better, right? Every gamer has an opinion about how a game should have been designed, and very few of them have any idea what the hell they're talking about. Just about every expert on Twitter now has like 100 people trying to explain to them their own field better than them. And so I kind of imagine the demiurge as this incredibly frustrated creator who has to listen to all of these eggheads who've never created a material realm once in their lives about how they could have done it better. And the closest that we've gotten would be the LucasArts game Afterlife, which is... Well, I mean, obviously you are a practicing game designer, Vanguard Master, but I'm sure some of the comments you've been getting are very much of the flavor that I've been discussing. The closest we've gotten is that the character in Afterlife is actually referred to as the demiurge, and there's no assurance of competence on the part of the demiurge. But of course, you're creating the afterlife, which you actually have no responsibility for creating the world below. You just create the place for the soul. So even then, it's not exactly the same as that idea. Now, will somebody take that and be able to do something with it? I have absolutely no idea, no earthly idea. Hey, how's it going? Got plan B. I'm assuming it won't do any... Oh, hey, we can use the gun that shot us. This could just be a silly idea, you have a good laugh about it and you move on. But I don't know, like there is something about these ideas. Like I said, if you like Philip K. Dick books, you're probably going to be interested in knowing about Gnosticism, because it seemed to have been this very, very fruitful, sort of line of reasoning that informed some of his ideas. And like I said, there's lots of other people who have, who've mined this seam, and yet I still feel that there's some good material that can kind of come out of it. And again, I don't mean to imply that all religious experience is only good for coming up with science fiction stories, but particularly when you look at, like, if you just like go to the Wikipedia article and you break down in terms of like the relation, you've got the demiurge, you've got the monad, the demiurge, the archons, the aeon, you've got a pretty, you could almost make a role-playing system around it if you wanted. But the main idea that I wanted to hear, right, is that in one sense, it's a little bit like talking about the humor in 1984. These are things that people tend to treat very seriously or treat as a very grand thing. And perhaps appropriately so, right? There's also the very interesting question, right? You know, some people have written stories. What if Carthage became the great power? What if Carthage won and it wasn't Rome, but instead it became a Carthaginian empire? That's an alternative history that's been written several times. Roma Delenda Est, yes. You've got, but then of course you could turn around and say, okay, so what if Gnostic Christianity had become the dominant form of Christianity instead of sort of the first heresy? What might have been different? I mean, we at least have the benefit that like the Mandeans are still around, right? So we have a little bit of an idea of what a religious practice might look like that in the modern world. But again, it's not a dominant one, and so even then you have different. It kind of matters what happens to people when they are in power, right? So even then, there's lots of ways that you can play around with those ideas. But it's a little bit like the 1984 and the humor thing in it, right? It's not helpful to deny that it's there. It is, and I find it a useful thing to think about, or at least it lets me appreciate the work even more. But more importantly, too, when you have the frustrated demiurge listening to every Tom, Dick, and Harry talking about how much better they would have done creation, this is a very relatable experience. I think most people kind of know what that's like. Everybody kind of knows what a backseat driving is like to experience. And I'm sure there's some ways that you can, I'm sure there are some ways that you can play around with that and have an interesting story or an interesting game or something.
Oh, fuck a dog doll.
One thing I know like I know my own name. You do not poke around strangers' cool boxes. Best case scenario, you find a half-gallon jug of rancid milk. Worst? Motherfucker up a sat mask. That's Raish Bartmoss.
The Bartmoss. Data crash rabbit Bartmoss. Guy who trashed the first net?
Well, it wasn't his uncle. Yeah, him. I'd recognize that mug anywhere. Wanted posters all over town back in 2020. Public enemy number 1, dead or alive. Half the city was on the hunt. Poor bastard. Ended up here as a dead rat in a cool box. Until some circuit blew and he thawed like so much meat.
Uh-huh. Yeah, about 20 years back, judging by the stench. Well, stood about as much as I can. Gotta go.
Hold up. Gotta be some electronics in here. First net relics, almost crank-powered. Be a shame just to leave it.
Even if there is, it's bound to be bunk.
Bound to be? Wouldn't be so sure. Only one way to find out.
Hold your breath.
Nah, I need to think about it.
Said the gonk who missed the shuttle. Come on, look inside.
Well. An SGI Tech Elisla. It's best cyber deck in its class.
See? Worth getting a little rot on your hands sometimes. Hey, just thinking. Cat at the Afterlife goes by Nix. Looked like somebody who'd know legacy tech. Chat him up, see what happens. Could end up pulling something from it.
Yeah, I don't know. Where I was just trying to go with that was just saying, like, these are, to me at least, I mean, nobody really has a great idea. By the way, there is something kind of interesting about the fact, like, if Dex is here, that means our body was dumped somewhere here as well. And of course, if that means, that would mean that we were rather close to Mr. Bartmoss. So apparently this is the place where the famous people go to to expire. But yeah, I mean, nobody has a really good example, or nobody has a really good idea of like where ideas come from, right? That's just where that. Oh, there's a Sanskrit term, essentia. God, again, I'm terrible with these pronunciations. But a beta tattva. Basically, it means simultaneously one and different. This means we are one with God in quality. We are only a particle of the whole, so we differ quantitatively. As an infinitesimal particle of the infinite, we, as fallen conditioned souls, can be an illusion, but the supreme personality of the Godhead is not subject to that. This is actually something that I might have been Richard Sarabji who does some of this, but this is actually, I got, while I was a research assistant in classics, there was a kind of a small symposium that was hosted that I got to attend, and actually some of the discussions that they had were some of the underappreciated connections between Eastern philosophies and the and pre-Socratics. So you have sort of a figure like Parmenides, who will only sort of allow for the monad or the one, and only the illusion. And in this case here, this idea of one and different seems like this nice synthesis. And I mean, to a certain extent, you can see Plato's work as being an attempt to come up with a synthesis between a Parmenides and a Heraclitus. Heraclitus being the one who talks about you can only step in the same, you cannot step in the same river twice. But his system of the forms is obviously very different from what's being described with Aegis Zoundir's point. Which is a really interesting one. And then, of course, once you start looking at some of the other things that we're talking about here, the Neoplatonists and the Gnostics, you start getting much closer to these Eastern ideas. What I found the most interesting, of course, was the fact that once we're talking about some of these Eastern influences, often we're talking about ones that are appearing in something like the Hellenistic period. So this would be people like the Stoics, Epicureans, skeptics. And bringing that back to the pre-Socratics obviously brings that to a much earlier and arguably more influential period. Not to suggest that not to suggest that the period I was talking about wasn't influential. Ugh. Why are they allowed to shoot through that and I'm not? Well, this should be easy to take out, though. Oh, that's no good. But clearly if you... I don't even know if I'm fighting here. I need to get a ping on someone before I can...
Find you and bury you. Huh? Man down! Take their position!
Okay, apparently I can't do pickaxe. That's a lot of guys. The easy way to deal with a sniper.
Hello? Where are you? I've got this.
You can ping them again. Okay, so they're on their way up. I think they're... Oh, crap. I'm trying to remember if there was a... If there was some kind of material that they made for, like some of the marketing material for the Matrix. But yeah, there's a very heavy... I mean, in some cases, they're thought experiments just straight out of, you know, even just a standard philosophy textbook, which does not make it any, like, it's no less of a movie for it. Like, to a certain extent, I guess, I think it was it Nozick? I mean, obviously this idea has been explored before, but, like, to a certain extent, you can think of, was it the Nozick's... Was Nozick the utility monster? Anyways, like this idea of the, you know, the machine where it's kind of the argument against utilitarianism, right? That you imagine some machine that will give you sort of perfect utility or whatever. I mean, to a certain extent, I guess it's an argument against hedonism.
I'm prepared to use excessive. I will personally find you.
Speaking of excessive force.
Bury you.
But I mean, I also think that's one of the reasons why science fiction is such an interesting subject, right? Like sometimes it's fun just because it's like the stuff that's interesting about fantasy in a different kind of clothing, right? You have strange ideas and sort of magical technologies and just, you know, all these different things. So who were these people? In Militech. All right, well, I don't feel too bad about taking out Militech. Unless it's Meredith Stout. You know, we're still hoping for round 2. But there's a Neil Stephenson. I can't remember if it was a lecture or an essay, and I have no idea what happened here. But I'm happy to have so much loot. But I think he came up with a definition of. I think he said speculative fiction rather than science fiction. But essentially, he described speculative fiction as idea porn, and that was the big appeal for it. And, you know, I think it's actually not a bad way of thinking about it, right? Like, even something like Cyberpunk 2077, of course it needs to be a mainstream game with, you know, broad appeal. And that's actually, I actually think that's a good benchmark for most people to shoot for, right? Like, you don't necessarily just want to appeal to a very narrow audience who are going to... you know, are going to sort of fully appreciate all the references. It's actually, there's a wonderful benefit to being able to bring these ideas to a wider audience in an accessible way, in my opinion at least. Not very Gnostic of me, but... Militech Officer 9482, reporting, status, strikers not responding to orders, give them a final warning. Done, no response. Workers continue to block factory entrance. Requesting permission to open fire, permission granted. Fire at will. Call to end illegal strike. Dear Mr. Alito, we will not be ending the strike. We ask that you pass on our demand that Michael Caddick pay all remuneration due to his workers. Sincerely, Jacob Taylor. Dear employees, your boss, Michael Caddick, is now working with Militech and has requested the corporation's assistance in resolving the situation. Thus, pursuant to Article 189 of Directive 2045-03-NC, Michael Caddick's factory is now the temporary property of Militech International Armaments. Effective immediately, the factory and adjacent property fall under Militech jurisdiction and shall remain so until the crisis is resolved to the satisfaction of all parties. With regards to the above, we would like to inform you of the following. 1. No union organization may announce a strike before the conclusion of the negotiation stage with Militech, i.e. the current strike shall be considered illegal. Any cost to the employer that may arise from illegal strike activity shall be borne by the striking party. Excuse me. Any employees of Michael Caddick's company refusing to end the strike will be considered terrorists and shall be treated accordingly. Sincerely, Martin Alito, Crisis Management Specialist. This is a really interesting idea. Thank you, Penguin Master. Martin Alito to Jacob Taylor. We hereby order you to call off this illegal strike. Your boss, Michael Caddick, has engaged the cooperation. Hang on, is this the same? Is this the second draft of... Okay, anyways. We won't read that again. Sorry. Dear Mr. Alito, we have no intention of calling off this strike. We request that you act as mediator in this situation and urge Mr. Caddick to pay his employees what he owes them. Sincerely, Jacob Taylor. So that's a really interesting idea here, right? This idea that Militech can essentially sort of buy up a company and apply its policies to break a strike. Yeah, like obviously being able to, so one, you want to spin a good yarn, but number two, being able to explore these ideas, and again, whatever skin you put on it, to be able to sort of work in that realm of ideas. And in the case of, you know, cyberpunk stories, literally the world of ideas, usually in the form of cyberspace. It just makes for some really satisfying storytelling, but also into these really interesting, interesting questions which usually tie on philosophy. And I mean, when we think back to the topic that kind of spawned a lot of this stuff, it just kind of comes back to the fact that you tend to be able to enjoy the stuff that you're into a lot more when you have this broader reading. It's not so much to sort of be able to have a lot of anecdotes for cocktail parties. I don't know how many people have watched this movie or read the play The History Boys by Alan Bennett. But there's this character, Irwin, who I think is kind of intended to be sort of this Neil Ferguson kind of figure. And he's always about the gobbets, like these weird little bits of history that just make you sort of inherently interesting. And usually it's sort of something very contrarian and kind of attention-getting. And one of the things, you definitely get the impression that Bennett does not really like the Irwins of the world. And I can see why, right? It's this, almost this prostitution of knowledge. Like this idea of you'll be mining these really great works to sort of pick up these very superficial details to just show off, basically. And what can be so interesting, right? And I think this is what Aegis is kind of getting to, is you can get these stories, you can get this popular entertainment, which is still dealing with very serious and very heavy ideas and doing so in a very engaging way. Just because it's something that would fall under, for lack of a better term, would kind of be considered low culture, definitely doesn't mean that it's any less serious or that it's dealing with things that can be thought of as trivial. I think that's why I kind of keep coming back to these kinds of stories and topics. Like, again, as far as religious or spiritual beliefs, I'm very pedestrian in terms of my own feelings. Like, I would not be at all a person who holds interesting or profound ideas on any of these topics. But man, it makes for gripping reading. And obviously, you know, more than just like the entertainment value. I think there's some benefit in just kind of getting some understanding of, you know, where you've come from. And I think sometimes reading some of the old stuff, right, some of the classics or ancient writings, sometimes that's a very interesting exercise in empathy, to be able to understand a world that's very different, you know, borderline alien. Can be a really interesting experience, particularly in the context of classics, right? Because in that case, you're not just necessarily reading Plato and trying to apply modern standards to it, but you're reading Plato and trying. I'm sorry, giving Plato as an example; it's just a convenient one. You're trying to read that and apply. By the way, I really like the fact that they recorded the samurai songs for this.
Get you anything?
This is booming, I hope.
Seen it yourself. Can't complain. Folks always get thirsty, and we're here when they do.
How's the afterlife? Working here?
No real complaints. Fights are rare, and when they do happen, they're over quick.
Killer clientele, am I right?
Your words, not mine.
Human line earned a spot on the menu here.
A chulo bowl with the bun? Yeah, I'm sorry to hear.
Remember his drink? The recipe?
Vodka on the rocks, lime juice, and ginger beer.
And a splash of love.
That's right. In the drink's name.
Jackie Wells.
Right. Well, the first Jackie Wells is on me.
Thanks, Claire.
No problem. Just holler if you need anything.
Hey, come here, let's talk.
My God, what's happening? Don't even ask permission. Just sit in someone's lap.
How's the arm holding up?
Ah, V, such a tender soul you are.
Come on, Tiny. I'm being serious.
Well, after paying you and Regina your due, I still had eddies in the bank for this bad boy. So yeah, I'd say the arm's fine.
I know you from somewhere.
Sorry, you've got the wrong guy.
Wait. The negotiations between Arasaka and N54. That cyber psycho scandal in the Defense Department. You used to work for Arasaka. You were behind the leak, weren't you? I thought you got flatlined. And yet here you are at the afterlife.
A fellow ex-monochromer, I see. Only thing I miss is the clean air.
What's it like, working for Rogue?
It's fine.
But that's it? Fine?
You want info on Rogue? Ask her yourself. I'm sure she'll be ever so obliged.
Listen, from one netrunner to another, you got any pro tips you could spare?
Don't see why not. If you're cool with Rogue, you're cool with me. I can sell you a few tricks of the trade from the Bartmoss era.
Rach Bartmoss. D. Bartmoss. Tell me you're fucking with me.
Before dropping off the grid, he unleashed a slew of ice-breaking grams and protos in the darkest corners of the net.
I heard how paranoid he was. Any idea what happened to him?
I know.
Who knows? But I was able to dig up a few classic Bartmoss relics. Here, let me show you.
Okay, as much as I'd love to buy this stuff, I'm still buying cars, so I think we're going to leave that be.
Hey, Nix, listen. Found something. Bartmoss's deck.
Mm-hmm. What else you find? Alan Turing's tapes?
Being serious. Have a look-see.
Ooh, running shits. God damn, V. Where'd you ferret this out of?
Found it outside town. In a fridge next to its former owner's rotting corpse.
Bart Moss all the way. Netwatch made him a wanted man when looking in Shanghai, Lahore, Santiago de Chile, while that dog alighted to the net. Wonder how long he'd have kept buzzing those wires if the power hadn't gone out.
Think you can pull anything off it?
Text coming apart. Humidity damaged. Encryption on the mem cube. Gotta be near divine.
Spare me the two-step, yes or no?
I can try. Failure, though, is a distinct possibility. Then all data will be lost. Done and gone.
Think there could be some no longer known vectors on the disk? A data crash-like thing, or rabbits? Because if so...
Then we pop open a bottle of malignant gin. Painfully aware of the risk, I am. But speaking straight, curiosity's consuming me. You feel it too?
No risk, no reward. Get to it.
Okay. Put the deck on the counter, just ginger-like.
All yours.
All yours? Oh, V. Got no sense of reverence. Expect if you found the goddamn Holy Grail, you'd fill it with caramel corn and Pop-Turds. Now, let's get this show underway. Most data's corrupt, but not all. Password. A dict attack, maybe. Nothing doing. And what about injecting a command? Ha! We're golden. One more hurdle, but it ought to be as easy as pie. My. Of all people, Bart Moss should have done better.
Dog shit, cat shit, rat shit!
Ideas, V, fast and stat. Couple of minutes and his skull sponge will be well done steak.
Okay, what do we got here?
Saw what we got. A brain broiler. You absolutely sure you want to jack in?
It's not an easy one. So we get the 55 BD, the E9. Okay, here we go.
Gotcha.
Fuck a muffin.
You breathing?
Apparently. Though it feels like I got a skull full of hot embers. Just... what the hell happened?
You started convulsing. Lights went out. Outlets started spitting sparks. So I sat down and finished for you.
Hold up. Mean to say, you breached Bart Moss' deck? Lowly you?
Damn straight. I am the best net runner in town, after all.
Doubt it, kid. But maybe someday. Alright. Let's see just what you pulled from this artifact. Logs, mail, chat history of sorts. Potentially interesting, but nothing explosive.
Shame, kinda. Well, I guess I could delve some more, see if I can't find something interesting in there.
Listen, my services usually command a tidy sum, but this time, well, seems you rendered me a service. Take this. Handful of demons live on that shard. Wasn't Bart Moss who coded them, but they should be useful nonetheless.
Thanks, Nix. You gonna get it together? Be alright? Or, you need help?
No. Be just fine. Couple of painkillers washed down with whiskey, and I'll be a new man.
Sorry, I realize I'm not finishing thoughts because I'm letting the game run by as well. I probably should be wrapping up right now, but I do feel a little bad that we were interrupted partway through. So here's the deal. I'm going to try and do a couple more missions. I need to go to the bathroom, though, and I should probably make something with caffeine because I have some writing to do after this. I'd like to get reading. And then I'd still like to take a crack at the problem that delayed my start tonight. So, it's midnight. It's 1 o'clock where I am. But yeah, I'll try and do a little bit more, but I am gonna go for a quick break. I always feel a little bad doing a break like this because I'm probably not going to be going that much longer. But for those of you that do want to hang out, and if you don't feel like getting up for a stretch or a glass of water or something else for yourself, the topic that we got on previously was largely about just, I guess for me, so there was the first part of recognizing quote unquote obviously good ideas only after like someone's had them. So like, again, the idea that you only need to see how people behave in front of construction sites to understand that SimCity was a good idea. Keeping in mind, I think probably SimCity predates a few of our birthdays, but can't remember when it was made. But this is always kind of an interesting question to get some responses from. So I would be interested in knowing, for you, what are some maybe obvious ideas that you have a particular take on, right? So this could be the demiurge as, a frustrated someone who's, a frustrated expert who's being backseated by a bunch of, eggheads. This could be, running out of power, but in this case, a reference to a, lame duck session for a government. It can be whatever you want. Like, I don't mean to hold these up as particularly good examples. I'm reasonably interested in them. But I always kind of like to hear what people's examples of, a common or quote unquote obvious idea and just taking it that one step into a place that you haven't seen it before. So while I am getting a bite to eat and a bathroom and some tea, I'm going to run ads for a little bit. But when I'm back, I would love to see some people's responses to this. All right, we'll see you in a little bit. Okay, sorry about the delay. I'm got my mouth full, so I had half a bagel that I thought maybe I might be able to scarf it down before getting back, but didn't have any answer I could get. I was just gonna say, like, here I was expecting to steal all your wonderful ideas. I got nothing. No, it's all good. I mean, I like questions like that personally, because I think they're an interesting little way of just getting some practice. Like, I tend to kind of swing between the idea that, like, ideas are the hardest thing in the world to come up with, or they're, like, so plentiful, like, it's silly to wonder where ideas come from. And, like, sometimes, like, I know Peter Thiel is probably not exactly a popular person around these parts. No, I mean, I'm not going to make an assumption on most people's politics, but generally I kind of get the feeling that he's not exactly a hero to most of the people who'd watch this channel. But he's got his book that he wrote with Blake Masters called 0 to 1. And in it, he's definitely talking about and I mean, like, just to be clear, too, it's definitely a product of a certain era in Silicon Valley, which is probably, I don't know if it's in the rearview mirror, but certainly it's sort of under closer scrutiny, and perhaps some of the more sort of triumphalist opinions are under closer scrutiny, let's say. Mind is more subtle than the gross material body, but our consciousness that we are is even further more subtle. Is that a quote or just a good insight on your part? You just... But whatever you think of the authors, there is something about the distinction that he makes from scripture. So this shows why I should be looking a little bit more closely at my reading. But the type of gotcha. The type of innovation that he's sort of referring to in the 0 to 1 type. So essentially the title of the book, 0 to 1, is distinguishing between the two types of innovation. There is the sort of incremental kind of improvement that you'll make. So the proverbial better mousetrap, or essentially, let's say, Edgar Cod develops the relational algebra. This is a way of representing data and a way of performing operations on this that's very helpful. It sort of underpins SQL, essentially. And sort of the introduction of the relational database is this new thing, which, obviously sustains very profitable businesses. And I mean, your phone's not going to work without it. Sorry, I just need to get my tea is done steeping, so I'm going to do my best. I don't actually have a spoon, so I'm doing my best with a Bic pencil. Nothing like Yorkshire tea and microplastics. But yeah, so you have the introduction of the relational database. Not stirring my tea. I'm trying to fish out the tea bag, which had been completely submerged, and there's really something about putting my fingers in boiling water that strikes me as an idea so dumb that even I wouldn't do it. So yeah, no, I just grab a pencil to just try and raise the thing to a point where I could get it without boiling my hand. Yes, it has basically been confined to my desk, and the graphite part has only been touching a piece of graph paper. Anyways, so the 1 to 2 innovation would be going from, I don't know, like I don't know how to rank databases, but let's say MySQL to Postgres, or Postgres to Oracle if Oracle winds up being better. Hello V, I have a little mule for sale. In other words, a custom-tuned Thornton Colby. A techie friend of mine found it in a ditch outside of town. Thought it was beyond repair. Nothing but rust dust in the communal bathroom for rats, by the looks of it. But once he gave it a wash down, banged it back into shape, swapped out the suspension and cranked up the engine, well, for riding around in the desert, you can't go wrong. Yeah, in any case, the type of innovation that the book is about, and I think the one that we tend to desire either for commercial purposes, but also in terms of just intellect, right? The truly new idea rather than the improvement on an existing one is one of those 0 to 1. One of those things that we tend to associate with true creation. However, I would also recommend a book called How to Fly a Horse, which certainly deals a lot with innovation as this accumulation of the work that's come before. So one of the worries that I do have is that some of the ideas that I've been talking about here, and again, these are like story ideas, or these are just sort of ideas to kind of kick around in terms of, little flights of fancy. I do sometimes worry that these are the more incremental types, which aren't really new. So like a great example I could take from this would be, something like Cultist Simulator, right? So it's really hard to say how you go from house on a hill. Hey, I hear a war vet's barricaded himself at home. Neighbors heard shots. Could be a cyber psycho. Figure out the sitch and keep me posted, okay? Let's put on some walking shoes, because getting to the house is a bit of a climb. Can't spy much from the bottom, but all the rackets got me thinking it's something big. Okay, so I want to take them down without killing them. But yeah, so one of the, so if you think of something like Cultist Simulator, right? Like, its origins are almost certainly in idle games, right? But it's kind of hard to think about how you go from, like, Adventure Capitalist or Cookie Clicker to Cultist Simulator, right? It would not, in fact, I'd say has much more in common with The Sims. I wonder if I can just get away with a sonic shock on this thing. No. Oh no, I gone and done it. Oh, crap. I may have to reload. Alright, I messed this up. So, reboot optics is probably my best bet here. I think Sir John is my... Nope. Nope. Electric baton. Nope. Crowbar. literally no idea where this guy is. Alright, so clearly making a bunch of noise on the sneaking part is not a good idea. Does make me wonder how I'm going to deal with the patrols, but I'll leave that. I'll leave that for later. But yeah, anyways, so the drawback that I have here is that a lot of the stuff that I was discussing is definitely more of this incremental type. And there is something to be said for the, like, something that feels, like, truly new. And that's the sort of thing that I feel like I'm not as good at. I definitely feel that I'm better at more of these incremental improvements, which still is helpful in its own way. But it's maybe not, it's kind of, actually, you know, honestly, this actually reminds me a lot of the kind of the opening dialogue for Provost Zakharov in Alpha Centauri, the more I think of it, right? Or no, hang on. The introductory one is about the substructure of the universe, but there's one where he's talking about the, like, paradigm shifting discoveries and research, but how we're looking. God, I used to pretty much know every single quote in Alpha Centauri, but I can't remember exactly how that one went. I guess it's not that big of a deal. Just crouch for a bit, must have been the wind, and then turn your back on you. That definitely happens in this. I try not to be too corny when it comes to some of the quirks of the game. This may be one that I have to leave for like for a time when I'm better equipped. Woe into the greens. Oh. Okay, we got 2 of those things running around. Possibly more, but... so, if I had to guess, I would say he's in here. We can probably get a verification of that. I should have done that ping sooner. Yep. So this may be tricky because I'm assuming he's gonna freak out the second I open the... I'm assuming he's gonna freak out the second I open this thing. Ah! Yeah, that could not have possibly gone worse. Okay, so I gotta find a way to silently take down those 2 bots, because obviously they're just gonna run in and annihilate me when that guy wakes up. It was not immediately clear to me that that guy knew where I was. He definitely opened fire, but opening fire is not necessarily the same as how you doing, Tikri? I was giving some very pointless rambles about ideas, and actually there was one topic that might have been interesting to you, which is the some contrasts between science fiction and fantasy, because I know to you science fiction is this incomprehensible mess of, if you can have supreme technology, why, you know, you can do anything. That doesn't make any sense. which is largely my reaction to certain types of fantasy. You've got supreme magic. What's the point of doing anything when you can do everything? Little stick from last... Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Obviously, that's a caricature, but... Actually, here's one thing I can do. I can go to my cyberware and see... Okay, so first of all, I got better versions of certain hacks. Contagion might be interesting. Cyberwell malfunction might also be interesting. Deafens the target. Okay. Let's replace that with short circuit. System reset feels like a really good one to get. Okay, so if I just try a short circuit on this thing. Well, the combat music didn't start. I want to deal with this other one first before we go too far. I only said that when I was running a sci-fi. Oh, fair enough. Sorry. I mean, again, I kind of wanted to have a little fun with it anyway, but I have no idea how firing a gun like isn't stealthy with these things, but somehow having them explode because of the short circuit is like the height of tradecraft. Maybe do a save here just because we seem to have... We've not yet poked the bear. So I figure there's two things that I can do here. One, I can try and open the door and sneak away, which is going to be what I try now. And the other thing I can do is go invisible and then, you know, open the door and sneak around. But just try to time it out. Okay, so this is an opportunity for me to distract, but I need to find something to get his attention for sure. Uh-oh. Okay, so he's alerted, but he's definitely not... Like, I should be able to take him out from behind as long as I'm careful. Although I am worried one of those turrets are up. Oh, come on, game. There we go. Nope, that's not what I want. Wait, XP for the blade skill? There was a shard, though. Also, I'm pretty sure we found the Cyber Psycho. Okay, I guess this is a chance for me to catch up with my reading anyway. Wow. Okay, we'll skip the archive conversations. Okay, I knew this would happen. They did it, they finally got us. While I was testing my Netrunner chair, one split second of distraction was all it took. Must have dialed it up too far, short-circuited the grid, coils blew. When the wife came to see what happened, all hell broke loose. I knew one day this would happen. I did all I could to protect them, but they were so careless. See what happens when you don't listen? You get ripped to shreds. I thought I'd prepared myself for the worst-case scenario, but nothing can prepare you for this kind of carnage. And just when we were a hair's breadth away from being 100% safe, that ice was supposed to protect us from backdoor net attacks. Last place they'd get us. If only they just stayed inside. It'd still protect them. What fucking good is all this security now? I don't give a shit. They can come for me. I'll put up a hell of a fight. Take those hive mind fuckers with me. They'll regret they ever messed with Sam Milton. Come at me, motherfuckers. I'm right here. Oh. I think there's a second one of those, so... Hi! Probably should have gone for the rarer stuff, but...
There is something new in the latest generation cyberware. Get ready for this, kids.
Netrunner chair. I need new coils for the Netrunner chair, model IOZ342YT that I bought from you a week ago. The ones that came with short-circuited my grid. Should have tested it when I was at yours. Maybe your system's fried, you'd be more careful about the crap you sell to people. Choom, you bought a chair for watching TV. You gotta be gonk to try and jack that into the net. This tech's practically ancient. Forget the coils and disconnect that junk before you flatline yourself. This isn't no toy for wannabe runners. Let this be a lesson to you. Do your research before you buy something. The fact that you can't repair it proves you're a bunch of incompetent hacks. Whatever, I'll just fix it myself. You just lost a customer. Good luck to, getting any others, because I'm telling everyone that We Sell Everything NC sucks. Okay, well, I'm pretty sure I found the Cyber Psycho. There we go. Okay. I'm assuming there's a shard that... Nope. Okay. Sorry, I'm suddenly feeling really, excuse me, really tired. I thought the tea was supposed to do the opposite. Yeah, apparently. Alright. I have a feeling that there's probably something that I'm missing in terms of this overall story, but I'm sure I will be able to infer it from the mission. Okay. Got our guy, knocked him out. Must have had a rough pass, because I've never seen anyone more paranoid about security. Tried coating his own ice, but all he did was cause a power outage. Family must have come in to check it out, and when the defense system's activated, no wonder he lost his shit. Gonna be hard to set him straight again. Poor Gonk was so afraid someone would zero him that he turned his house into a death trap. Too bad his family happened to walk into it. Went completely unhinged after what happened. Good thing you got to him first before he could off himself. Yeah, so one thing I've run into, Kree, I managed to catch up. My deal on the writing thing is that I will allow myself... So, like, Kree had to deal with me when I was, like, trying to establish my writing habit, but playing chicken with myself to where I'd be up at, like, 5 o'clock in the morning, you know? Not writing and seeing whether or not I would actually follow through with the thread not going to bed. So I've kind of stopped that. If it's been like a really busy day, I kind of can trust myself enough to fulfill it. But as it happens, there was like I definitely nodded off last night before I could do the writing. So I had like basically an hour to kind of get through. And okay, it was the music. I was like, is there like a slow-mo going on here? But it was just the song. But yeah, like I think it's fine. I don't want to turn it into a habit, but I feel like that's kind of doing a good job of keeping the habit going while also not like writing while exhausted. But the challenge is that, like, the whole week I've really been feeling out of it. So I'm still not sure whether or not any of the qualities, you know, been there. I don't know. Still have the streak. I guess that counts for something. V, if you're planning on spending more time in the Badlands, I have just the car to suit your needs. An all-terrain Mizutani Shion. It may look like a fuel-guzzling beast, but it could drive over a field of nails and broken glass like freshly paved asphalt. It pains me to part with it, but such is the Nomad's lot. We cannot get attached to anything. Photo shoot in Wraith territory? Respect. Nothing sells like a good and gory firefight. And if you've seen our ultra underground word of mouth gigs. Anyways, looks like they were trying to sell some fucking overpriced sad rags. But at least some choom had the corpo balls to drag them all out here. All out here in that sweet, sweet ride. New ad shoot, rural beauty, inspire the city, enjoy the country. I know there's been a lot of feedback regarding the new ad campaign for Pseudo, but I would like to remind you that this was the client's decision, and although we may not agree with it, we must respect it. The person behind it is Pseudo's new creative director and son of the company president, Michael Koch. Below is an attached statement from Mr. Koch, and I request that you abstain from unsolicited commentary at this time. With the Rural Beauty campaign at Pseudo, we want to show that exclusive corporate attire need not be bound by elegant design alone, but also by comfort. Focus tests tell us that many of our consumers and potential customers enjoy the idea of being able to make a visit from their downtown offices and penthouses to their cottages on the outskirts of the city without the need to change into a new outfit or reimagine their wardrobe. So there you have it. We have to work with the direction we've been given. In terms of our ad's composition, let's stick to the same format of the model with the car, but But instead of a luxury make or limo, we're swapping in a Thornton Colby Butt. Pickup trucks are time-tested symbols of the rural and rustic lifestyle. Our aim should be to capture the genius in this simplicity. Now, because the set is on in a more hazardous area, near the old racetrack, I tried to work out a single-day trauma team package for everyone. If anything happens, you should be covered. But if you do own your own private firearm, I'd advise bringing it with you anyway. So good luck out there and enjoy the session. I'm counting on your bright minds to find and capture this rural beauty Mr. Koch has envisioned. Clint Walker, Your Choice Marketing Agency. Yeah, no problem, Vanguard Master. I'm probably going to be heading there myself. Well, not exactly. I need to finish this up. Then I need to do the writing. Then I'm probably going to take another crack at this programming problem. And then I'm sure at some time like 4:30 in the morning I'll actually get some sleep. But somewhere along that line I will read your pitch deck and give you the feedback. Oh, and lots of tea, yes. Excuse me. So with all of the corporate elements inside of this, I know I ask this every once in a while. Any fans of the show Succession in chat? Oh, just a free truck? I'll not complain. It seems a whole lot like the old truck, to be honest, but... got 21K. $33 is the next. At least now I don't have the pounding techno to compete with in terms of voice. Right off. We're not going to shy away from the fight. Oh, especially with this guy. Let's see, 55. Oh, come on. Hopefully this works. He's got a shotgun, so...
Finally, some action!
Good God, what's doing that to me? So I'm probably gonna have to make a dash for it. There he is. There's more than one.
I don't want to go like this.
Oh, come on.
Come on, move it.
I'm gonna try to avoid blowing another... I'm not that hungry. No cat food. Hot dog. I didn't even want that fight. Just not efficient in turning. Conversation with Pete and Lisa, please. We got it out of him. Fucker made it through 3 old fingernails. Ugh, spare me the details. Said the biotechs were going to do some maintenance day after tomorrow. Showed us where on the map. Got a little blood on it, though. Pete! Ah, kidding. Don't use paper maps. Gave us the coords. And then, sorry, and there'll be those biotechs who fix up the farms. The protein ones? What other kind is there? Just want to make sure. Yeah, they have all the tech we need. Might be some goodies for me to pick up. Well, I mean, I gotta get back to my vehicle anyway, but... Looks like my car got a little damaged. I feel like I need to just go for the snakeskin boots out of principle. Nope. Sorry, gotta have the fancy pink boots. Okay. I want to keep one non-lethal. Show off. So I'm getting the impression I probably should have headed out this way a lot earlier than I did. That fight was definitely a tougher one, but for the most part I've been running into things that don't feel like they're outside of my capabilities, whereas a couple of the in-city ones definitely felt like I was outmatched. But, I mean, that is one... I know there's other opinions on that here, but I will confess I actually kind of... Like... I don't know whether or not it's a good thing that games do this, but if you are going to have difficulty based on different regions, it'd be nice if you would label the regions. You could have varying difficulties in other ways, but I sort of feel like... I don't know. It definitely felt like there were some parts of the city that I shouldn't be running around until I was a higher level. And I'm not entirely sure what's gained by saying that it's hard once you've shown up at the mission, as opposed to saying that it's hard when it's, you know, just a gig on the desktop. It just feels like I'd be wasting less time pursuing things that are beyond me. When I'm going to find out that information one way or the other. Anyway, greetings, brother. Would you happen to be looking for a new car, the kind that won't choke on dust every time you go through a turnpike? If the answer is yes, then check out the coordinates I have attached. I have a Quadra that my brother-in-law tuned up. When I say he's a perfectionist, I mean he checks 5 times before tightening every screw and polishes of every inch of frame until it sparkles. You won't find better quality for your money. The truth is, every nomad wants a car like this, but few can afford it. I hope that you're tempted by the offer, because I would rather sell to someone I know rather than a stranger. Too many cars to buy. I don't know if we're ever going to make enough money for it. I guess I can stop scrapping parts and just sell them. We'll maybe do that later. Oh, come on. Okay, I guess I can only tag the 1. 2. Let's try and use that system reset first. Okay, it takes its sweet time. Oh wow. They're not kidding when they say that takes them out. Okay, not good for me. Looks like they're trying to flank on the left. God. Alright. That was sloppy in a lot of ways, but maybe next time I just drive through and not worry about it. Yeah, you know what? We'll get some practice. 255s and a 7A. Well, you know, 355s also works. Okay, good start. I'm assuming that's my helmet in the air like that. So I'm clearly not equipped for long range fighting. Maybe a disable cyberware ability would not be a bad idea. So I don't think that was intentional, but I actually really like the way that the music sort of like stopped and then came back in. Okay, so that obviously took a couple of tries. One of the things I'm hoping to avoid doing as well is using up these heals, because they have this really nice like healing over time effect. Aiko, you need to take out someone with the Wraiths. Guy's name is Steve Razor Kowalski. It's a message, so make it look ugly. Need them to blow their top. Most importantly, make it look like it was 6th Street. We don't, we want to start a war between them? Dope. Not what I meant to do, but fair enough. So it presumably is telling me there's something here for a reason, but I'm assuming there's maybe some kind of terrain that... Well, that or it's just fallen through the world. Anyways, probably not worth spending that much time on. Actually, there is one thing I can do for the character. I'm mostly interested in the ones that give me access to I'm gonna hold off on this for now. I was mostly thinking of things that would allow, either give me more crafting resources or make me like allow me to build new or better things. Wound from a sniper caliber round. Gonna have to engage it in long range. Hey, Raffens are hunting someone out in the Badlands. Heard it might be a cyber psycho. Try and get there first. As usual, try to get him alive too. Apparently, it's some fresh fanatic converting Raffens in a pretty gruesome way. Watch your back. He might have some military training. Witnesses claim they saw a silent old man wandering the Badlands, leaving a trail of bodies behind him. This seems like the sort of thing that's going to be a real pain to deal with. Because if it's a sniper, then presumably they're going to be able to see me coming. Hostile, then let's pay attention to that.
Who would have thought?
Oh, Jesus. Creature depicted in this painting resembles iconography commonly associated with the voodoo boy. So I guess the option of trying to sneak up on this guy is gone. Good God, I can't even see them. Oh, there they are. Okay, so we don't have the option for reset system yet. What the hell was I thinking? Target's immune to system reset. Okay, so I need to find a fast way to close that distance. I don't think this healing's gonna work, incidentally. Yeah, I can't do that in combat. Okay. Oh, well, that's that. So it seemed like looking at the painting triggered the... So I'm curious if I run up to the rock here. Oh, interesting. I can't see the painting from this angle.
Who would have thought?
Okay, well, invisibility meant nothing. This may be one I want to try later. One thing I'm gonna be a complete cornball. We're gonna just straight up ignore all of this. I'm just gonna run straight to the... Oh. So presumably this is not how you're actually supposed to deal with this. I notice there's a bunch of mines on the ground, so that's going to be a bit of a problem. But one thing at a time. Problem is, if I want to take him alive, I have all my work ahead of me. So start by disarming. There's another one. God, how would I even get an angle on that? Might be able to actually pull this off.
Better not miss anything.
Alright, I have no idea how you're supposed to do that if you actually follow the advice of checking the clues. I know many of my old brothers in arms wander this life aimlessly, living hand to mouth while their souls slowly disintegrate with apathy. This is why I'm writing this, to provide reassurance. Your purpose is right in front of you, you just haven't perceived it yet. Today I went through a difficult test, but I came out alive and now my life makes sense again. It all started with a job from the VDBs. Seems straightforward at first. For an old dog like me, it's as easy as aiming and pulling the trigger. I did a quick recon, and that same day confirmed mission completion. Then something strange happened. Instead of receiving my payment, an effervescent light filled my vision, and before me appeared the guardian of the border between the living and the dead. To my friends who live in destitution, do not lose hope. The day will come when you too will be put to the test and be given a second chance as I have. Do not waste the opportunity. Once more, we will fight side by side. I am now opening the path to the sacred land with sacrifices to the Loa gods. Join me! Managed to incapacitate our guy, named Zion Wild. He had some burnt-out military-grade combat implants. Plucked his victims from the Raff and Shiv so that the Loa gods would open up his passage to the sacred realm. Not sure if he prayed too hard or if those singed circuits messed with his head, but something went seriously wrong. Maybe you'll be able to find out more. Looked up Zion Wild and dug up a list of military ops he took part in before dropping off the radar. Only time he pops up is getting caught urinating on City Hall. Eventually he ended up somewhere in Pacifica doing odd jobs for old war bodies. This conversation must have happened recently. Or sorry, conversion must have happened recently. I kind of miss when there was more sort of investigation you could do with the, when there was more investigation that you could do with the, like, looking up the bodies and such. I sort of feel like the earlier Cyber Psycho missions had more of that. Alright, but what does it say? The creature depicted in the painting resembles iconography. Okay, no, we read that. Sorry. So, where did I leave my vehicle? Oh, there it is. More importantly, what's the next job?
So, as much as I need you for this new gig, I know you. There is a car sitting in the middle of a minefield out in the Badlands. I need you to grab it for me. The chances of you exploding aren't zero, but let's face it, isn't life one big minefield anyway? Details it.
Not even reading the spec and getting to work on this already. Special delivery. Retrieve the abandoned car from the minefield and deliver it to Dakota. Location nearest road off Interstate 9. Details: the Badlands are peppered with disarmed minefields from 2071, though after several folk were dislegged by these disarmed mines, most decided to steer clear of these areas. That is, except the smuggling types. A number of their routes run through these fields. Risky, yes, but brilliant all the same. Why would anyone guard the border when mines practically do your job for you? But listen up, a smuggler and his rig got stranded out in the middle of one of those minefields. Maybe his tank went dry, maybe he had a heart attack, maybe he set out on some vision quest. Who knows, doesn't matter. What's important is that I don't know the routes these fellas run, and now they're getting dropped in my lap. Get me the stranded vehicle. I know some nomads who'd pay handsomely for that GPS data. Okay, let's see if we can short circuit this one too. So obviously, if I can, I want to pick up the goodies. These. Oops. Oh, did I do system reset on that one? Do I have any, like, real drinks? Yeah, obviously if I can, I want to grab the parts. Although if I blew myself up with a mine already, I might want to be a little more careful. Running just shows my confidence in. Okay, what is it with... I don't know if there's any way for me to get this now. That's like the second time we've had an enemy which presumably there's some kind of valuable part. But the body's getting in the way. Anyways, neither here nor there. Deceased, entry wounds from high caliber bullet.
Another gonk who thought fate smiled on him.
He's probably smiling himself before he OD'd on Maelstrom's shipment.
Jero Johansson, this is last time, baby. My last run, I promise you. Yeah, last time because you'd take a bullet. Didn't see what I sent you? Militech knows the routes. Checkpoints are tighter. Maybe that's why I go through the minefields. I know the way by heart. They don't. Can't risk it, not yet anyway. It's gonna work fine, then it'll be done. Just wait for me.
This is what you get for sampling Maelstrom's supply. Strongest shit out there. Nothing else that can fire up their burnt-out synapses. Poor bastard. His output's probably out in Albuquerque waiting, unaware little Jiro's brain turned to jelly.
This is weird. Oh, maybe it's psychoactive present. Like, the way I'm reading this is that this guy got shot, not they OD'd on whatever Maelstrom had. Am I miss... This looks very strange. Okay. Neither here nor there. Let's just navigate the minefield and get our pay. But yeah, no, I'm wondering if that, if the mission changed during development, because it seems to be suggesting that there's some kind of overdose, but, you know, the model and the description suggest a gunshot wound. We might even be able to buy a vehicle before we finish tonight.
Well, well. These are the results I like to see. Until next time, brother. Gate closed.
More money. Alright, so we're up to 37. So yeah, we can get the cheapest of the cars at least. I think there was a time when I would save up to try and get the most expensive on the list, but I'm actually going to work my way from cheapest to the most costly. And that's just basically so by the end of it, I wind up with a, I wind up with a fast car that I don't need to worry. Oh, okay, I guess I'm back to the bike. Basically, the idea here is that working my way up, the last thing I wind up with will be sort of best or at least most expensive. You sure are moving up quickly like a restless spirit. Careful now, life still has many trials in store for you. More contracts are waiting. So happy to do more of those because they didn't pay a ton, but they were more or less straightforward. Let's take a second here and see. These boots look so silly. At least I get a cool looking bandana now. I know you have like the... Are you gonna say you like the boots? I think it's mostly just how they contrast. Well, first of all, I know pink is your signature style. But I was just gonna say, I think they look kind of silly, just given how sort of green and earth tone everything else is. So they really stick out. I also just don't have any. I don't have any taste. But one of the things I really insist on, and again, this is one of the, I think this got the silliest in Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Breakpoint. That was just a deliberate way to bring the bike in the right direction. So I kind of understand that the Ghost Recon series has shifted away from sort of the tactical shooter origins. It's not completely abandoned it, but obviously Wildlands is very different from, you know, Ghost Recon or Rainbow Six as it originally appeared. And actually Outworld has a much greater fondness for the Tom Clancy games than I do, but I know he much prefers... I mean, in fact, that it's through Outworld that I sort of know what Ghost Recon was originally like. And you know what? I did say I was going to finish with the truck, but because you said nice things about my boots, Kree, I'll hang out a little bit longer. I got to figure out what mission I want to do, though. But yeah, oh, interesting. Maybe we'll try this side job first. Lots of gigs outside the city. So yeah, maybe one of these and then possibly this one, depending on the time that we have. But like, he's definitely a big fan of the old school style. Eds just came in. Always a pleasure doing Bisbee. So I know for him, like something like Ghost Recon Wildlands really just does not really compare to the originals, which I think is fair enough, right? Like, I think when you introduce a franchise, there's a certain expectation that you create. So like, a good example of this might be to look at what happened with XCOM. So XCOM obviously was a turn-based sort of tactical game. Really good one, very well known, well respected. Terror from the Deep was not made by the original team. It was sort of, you know, capitalizing on the success, and I think some people sort of considered it to be something of a reskin of the original game, which was, but again, not made by the original team, and so, you know, not necessarily, didn't quite have the same heart as the original. I haven't played it, so I'm really not in a position to say one way or the other. But I think it's fair to say that Terror from the Deep is not as well respected as UFO Defense. And then I think Apocalypse was the only other one until the Firaxis sort of reimagining of the game that you know, took the sort of the style of the original. All the other XCOM games were everything from first-person shooters to flight sims to, I guess, a cover-based shooter in the case of the Bureau. It kind of feels like there's been an XCOM game for just about every genre of game, but it's not necessarily anything that really bears a resemblance to the original source material. At which point, I think there's a reasonable question in terms of just saying, is like, well, why... you know, why bother, right? Like, you know, why put the XCOM label on it if it's going to be so different from the core XCOM experience? And I think when I think of kind of Outworld's feelings on the Ghost Recon series. I suspect that's probably what's happening there. Now, for my part, I actually kind of liked Wildlands. I thought there was just enough of sort of like almost the Phantom Brigade kind of set up a mission and try and, implement your planning. And I found that kind of appealing. But I could see why, if you wanted something a little bit closer to the original Rainbow Six games, how that could be, unappealing. But I think the big break, so to speak, for me at least, was
on the earth would wait for you.
This guy again. All right, I'll finish the thought and then we'll have our moment of zen. I think the problem with Breakpoint for me was I could be on side with something like Wildlands because, you have kind of the Grand Theft Auto driving around, but I mean, it's not like your character's got to get somewhere. And I think the transport side led to this really interesting experience of sort of like, okay, you take out the drone and you see where all the bad guys are, and especially if you're playing with someone else, you're two special forces soldiers, maybe you're trying for a really stealthy approach, so you work it out so that you can kind of move through the camp without raising the alarm. And it's certainly fair to say that if you want to take a bit more of a tactical approach to the game, you can, which means that I think it's a different expression of that core idea that probably made people attracted to the Ghost Recon label. And the big struggle that I had with Breakpoint when I played it, and I know they've changed this since then, but the game, it didn't really speak to me even after they made the change, was I remember when I first, and again, this is me explaining my wardrobe choices in Cyberpunk. The thing that drove me kind of nuts was the first item that I got was like a Kevlar helmet, right? So, okay, gives me a certain protection level, obviously, you're moving a little bit further from sort of the simulation style, like military sim sort of thing. You're, like, it's not to say that gear is irrelevant, but, probably not changing helmets like halfway through a firefight because it'll improve your aim or something like that. But it's like, Division was successful. They maybe want to implement a few things that, provide some variety. Let's see where this goes. And then, like, within, I think, 15 minutes, I looted a baseball cap, and it was like 5 times the amount of protection that the Kevlar helmet offered. And that was like the first indicator that I'm like, yeah, this is probably not for me. Because I like the Division 2, but I understand the Division 2 as like basically a cover-based Diablo, right? I do not expect the Division 2 to be something where I'm like taking out enemies with a single shot unless I'm building a very high critical damage sort of sniper build. I'm under no illusions that it's anything other than a very stylized video game. Whereas Ghost Recon, up till a breakpoint, I could sort of have this fantasy that I'm doing something soldierly. And in fact, it was a real shame because I actually remember building this sniper for Breakpoint and like taking out a guy at a really far distance and just seeing the utter chaos that was sown in the ranks, and like the fact that they couldn't see me, and just slowly being able to pick them off one by one through sort of this like clever planning and like just sort of disrupting their line, like essentially just kind of attacking them from places they weren't going. I don't know if that was conscious on the a conscious choice in terms of how they made the AI, or if I'm just sort of drawing the apophenia element that we keep bringing up over and over again. But that was actually really rewarding. Like, that really made me feel like it was something that I had wanted from those games. And then everything else behind it was basically, you know, we're putting like we're putting one foot in the Division land and one foot in Ghost Recon land, and it was just not appealing either way. And then I think they introduced like a realism mode, which kind of got rid of the baseball caps that were like more protective than Kevlar helmet. But I don't think that was enough for a change. But yeah, anyways, one of the things that I do when I play games like this is that as cool as I like my characters to look, I do like the idea of keeping them in the outfits that they are wearing. So like, if the pink boots give me the best protection, I'm going to have to choose between, you know, something that may clash with the rest of my outfit, or something that does not have the same stats.
You know, I'm starting to get used to these little meetings.
I sense you have many questions. I may answer only one.
You know what's happening to me, don't you?
You are dying. You have two souls within you. One wants to fight. The other is afraid.
I really like the reflections in the glasses.
Which one's mine?
Both. Are you ready for the final meditation technique?
The last one?
Yes. It will cost however much you want.
Hope this'll do.
I will guide you through the meditation. This is a meditation of the air element. We are in the mountains, heading toward the peak. We squeeze between two boulders. On the first boulder sits an eagle. The spirit of the air passes through every fiber of this eagle. Spirit of the air, primordial wind, I send you greetings. We are of one blood, you and I. You are within me, and I am within you. Without you, life would not last even a few minutes. So vital are you to us. Oh, great spirit of the air, please, cleanse my body and soul. Relinquish pain, sickness, the negative energy from negative people, worlds, and dimensions. Give me the energy of life. Give me health, wisdom, knowledge, strength, joy, happiness, and lasting inner peace. I am an eagle. The wind cushions my wings, caresses my feathers, enters every fiber of my body, fills the spaces of every atom and molecule. The wind cleanses the body, the soul, and the subtle body. Circling upwards, we rise up high. We feel lightness, purity, joy. Our body is filled with happiness, peace, and harmony. We thank you, Spirit of the Air, with our mind, body, and soul.
And he is gone. At least he left something.
Fuck, I feel like a dog's shit.
You see that? There was a Zen master here, and poof, he vanished like that.
The fuck are you talking about?
He taught me how to meditate. It was kind of weird.
Not my scene. Go and talk to Misty if it bothers you.
Yeah, good idea.
Just waiting for the shard. Okay. Oh, here we go. Teachings of the Temple, excerpts. The welcome truth that sleep and death are twin sisters, beneficent, healing, and vivifying us, is gradually making its way through the scientific as well as the religious world, bearing on its Wino's faith and trust in the fundamental lays of life which underlie all phenomena, and casting down forever the great Moloch of fear which stands at the gate of all men's minds, ready to devour each child of hope which has been conceived and born in the joy of life. Time and space are annihilated in dream life because of the rapid action of the energy of mind when freed from the bonds of matter, and life in a state of dream is a foretaste of what life may be when the coarser grades of matter which now hold the embryonic God-man in bondage are refined, and the energy which now must act under all the difficulties man has ignorantly thrown up by unnatural, unwise methods and practices, through countless incarnations, will then be guided and controlled by the higher or spiritual will of man for the perfecting of a body as much superior to the bodies of the present races of mankind as the latter are superior to those of the animal creation. I think we've read Beelzebub's tales to his grandson, but we'll do that again. Even before our arrival, many beings in Babylon had lost their minds over this subject, while many others were inching closer to the same fate. The burning question of the day, the question that racked the brains of both pitiful scientists and normal beings of Babylon, was this: do we have a soul or not? There were all sorts of most fantastic theories on this subject, with new ones appearing all the time, and each and every one of the tempting hypotheses had its supporters. Despite the overwhelming number and diversity of these beliefs, they were all based on one of two completely opposing premises. The first was called atheism, while the other was idealism or dualism. All dualistic hypotheses held that the soul existed, and of course that it was immortal and could suffer many things even after death, the death of the being. Meanwhile, the atheistic theories held the complete opposite view. In short, my boy, when we come to Babylon, we came upon what could only be called constructing of the Tower of Babel, or Babel. Okay, I am feeling really, really tired, but let's see if I can get at least one more gig in before we wrap up for tonight. Where'd my car go? Show off. Actually, Kree, I was delighted that you saw the episode that obviously we were chatting about. I'll confess, the last few videos for Exile, I've definitely walked away with a couple. It's like, I wonder what Kree's gonna think of this one. Just because I realize this is your first exposure to Exile, and it's definitely a challenging and very dramatic one. So. I thank you for being a good sport on my slightly more naggy question. Yeah. That's interesting. What's over the edge? Flight of Falco. Oh! Heard rumblings you're searching for David Martinez's crew. Well, you found it. Name's Falco. There's something you want? Found an XBD. Don't know who scrolled it, but it mentioned Martinez. Wanted to get in touch. Find out more. We're out of the biz. Out of the spotlight. Gone dark as Scop Stand Coffee. It can't be that dark. You're singing that Amadeus song. Whatever you heard, the past is the past, and not one we aim to dig into. Now, we did rummage around some in yours, V. Merc who popped out of thin air and took Night City by storm. Given your history with Arasaka, well, you and David have got more in common than you might reckon. Now, I'm sure you could track us down if you tried. That's why I gave you a knock first. My way of saying don't bother. Our 15 minutes might be spent, but you still got time on the clock. Left something nice for you with El Capitan. Take care and good luck out there, V. I'm mildly tempted to follow up on that, but again, we'll see where we're at. Actually, what time is it? It's almost 3 a.m., so yeah, I should probably make this the last one. But yeah, no, it's like what I had originally said with Exile. It's one that's very different from the base game of Cultist Simulator in that it can fail you very quickly. And I think that's a virtue of it because you don't invest too much into your losses. But as you can see, like with if you get caught out, that DLC can sort of turn on a dime.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't or drink. Now, I've been trying to work with Iris Tanner for years, but the stubborn mayor always brushes me off. Kind requests, the promise of good pay, none of it helped. Always the same response. I don't do biz with fixers. But today she has changed her tune. And why? She's been kidnapped by wraiths. Pettiness aside, if you help her, I bet she will finally toss me a bone. The gig details are attached. Go fetch V.
Alright, SOS Merc needed. Rescue Iris Tanner, Edgewood Lane. Iris Tanner is the best tech specialist I've met in decades living outside the city. Car broke down, trouble with water filters, ailing generator, call Iris and give her 5 minutes with it. One thing she's not great with, though, people. Reading them, at least. Foolish girls starting doing biz with the wraiths. Making them angry is bad, sure, but making them happy is almost worse. Rather than just pay for a job well done, they kidnapped her instead. You ask why they kidnapped someone who's capable of putting out an SOS from a rickety old radio? I, Dakota Mad Coyote Smith, eldest daughter of the Pomo tribe, eldest fixer in the Badlands, will offer my expert opinion. They're stupid. So as always, I want to tag whatever I can find. Oops. Thought they turned around. Oh boy. It's had a slightly different approach in mind, but from Kojo to Iris Tanner, we have 2 tuned Galenas for repair, collision damage at our place. Why me? Don't you have your own mechanics? Our mechanic also has collision damage, can't work at the moment, and you're the cheapest. Cheapest? Seriously? Is that all you've heard about me? Yes, no fixer fee, right? You work alone. We like that, as long as you're good enough. Wanted to try and take him all the way to the bin, but it doesn't always work out. Alright, let's get some goodies. So I need 55s afterwards. Okay. I am a little concerned that I haven't tagged all the
How much longer are we gonna babysit this chicken?
I'm kind of concerned I haven't tagged all the bad guys yet, but
Taking up all the space in sight. Yeah, thanks.
okay. So I may be, oop, I was gonna say I may be able to ignore those 2 guys. One of them turned around. Oh, come on. Is he like looking at a BD or something? Alright. Okay. This is just silly.
What difference does it make who you work?
Okay, stick him in there. No, wrong side on that. Oh, well, that's Iris. I'm going to behave in a manner completely inconsistent with how I should be acting. And that's going to be so I can clear out these jokers. I don't even know where I want to stick them. No, 44. Turns out Glitter's got a bunch of stuff like Cathinone, but short of someone camping out and watching how the Tigers make the stuff, no way I can get my head around the formula. Track down a lab first, then we'll talk, because doing it ass backwards is going to take me years. Worth a try, that shit goes faster than fresh chrome in this city. Could take it cross-country, branch out. Shit, we got the trade routes, all we gotta do is use them. Okay, I think I can use my hacking for that. Job. Kojo to Iris Tanner, we found two tuned Galenas for repair collision damage at our place. Why me? Don't you have your own mechanics? We've read this before. Hey, got a problem. Right, we've read that before in Forever Young. Oh, right, hang on. 355s, where do I get that? Maybe a BD, 7A BD. Yeah. Oh, it didn't work out, that 7A though. Gonna wait until they turn around and then we can scoop them up. I could try going around the other end, but I'm pretty sure they're gonna turn around as soon as I head out. Maybe not.
Took you long enough.
Iris Tanner, I'm supposed to get you out of here.
We'll talk later. That's at least what I had tagged.
They didn't hurt you?
No, we were still in the negotiation phase. They made a pretty solid case, so it was only a matter of time. Push came to shove, I'd rather slave under Raffin than be chopped into little pieces.
We'd best get a move on.
I'm not going anywhere without my ride. It's sitting in the garage.
That wasn't in the spec. At least tell me it's fast, this ride of yours.
No, it wasn't the spec. And no, it's not particularly fast, either. Let's say it's between you and me, huh? I'll make it worth your while.
We'll see how things play out.
Iris's notes. Order 1377, Matty G batteries checkup, paid. Order 1477, Chris bearings replacement adjustment, paid. Order 1577, Eddie and Gem Circuits Electronics reinstallation, paid in advance, setup installment plan. Order 1677, Dingo basic renovation package for Columbus model, negotiable price. Kojo to Iris Tanner. Man, they really want us to know about this conversation for some reason. This has got to be her vehicle. Oh boy.
Thanks for taking care of my ride.
Don't mention it. Why didn't you want to work with Dakota before?
I'm not crazy about fixers. Might as well be pimps without the special favors.
Right.
Prefer lining up my clients, playing by my own rules. When you're a lone wolf, there's no fixers waiting to steal a cut of your hard-earned cash.
So I take it this is an exception.
And one to last, hopefully.
Sturdy, I'll give it that. I probably should have anticipated that turret, because there was one on the way in. But it doesn't seem like it was that big of a problem for us. Yeah, I think probably I'm going to turn this one in and we'll call it for tonight, because I feel like I've been chatting a little bit less. I'm definitely feeling tired. And I figure it's probably not a bad idea. I might even leave a few of the things I wanted to do tonight for tomorrow. Try and get the writing in at least, but maybe some of the computer stuff. I can give it a rest for one night. Yeah, it's funny, like I felt like I had a second wind, but it's not just like I'm not just tired, but I'm like tired and headachy and then just like achy. So I think honestly one of the things I need to do is just like get out of the chair and move around. Anyways, neither here nor there.
Jemai, brother.
Dakota, Iris Tanner, as per your request.
Sister.
Cut the bullshit, all right? I'm no one's sister. Just tell me what I have to do. After that, we're even. Thanks for everything, B. Happy to return the favor sometime. Just make sure you get what she owes you.
V has nothing to worry about.
Thanks. Nice doing biz with you.
I'm listening.
Alright, that's not a bad payout for a fairly straightforward mission, I feel. So let's take a... Oh, we've got a bonus. D, it's Tanner. Thanks for handling my ride. As a token of appreciation, I stashed a little something for you in the drop point by the Sunset Motel. I reckon that makes us even. Rightio, take care. It's a kilometer, so we'll get a vehicle. I did do a flip this time, I see. So yeah, I might as well properly finish out the mission. I'll do a quick review of maybe some of the things we can do. The big challenge for me is to figure out, like, when do I want to move from side missions to like main story missions? And one of the, like, somebody had said that it's a good idea to, you know, take some time to stop and smell the roses, so I feel okay doing that. But on the other hand, I have noticed that for a couple of missions at least, it definitely feels that I'm severely outclassed. Now, I have gotten a couple of levels since then, so, you know, it may be that some of these things that I found challenging are not as difficult as before. Yeah, that's my inclination as well. The time that I don't do it actually is usually when I'm streaming. Because I also recognize that there's, you know, like, especially with all of my chatting, there is like, there's definitely a way of streaming stuff that makes, like, the one thing I'm reluctant to do, I don't mind playing a game where I may talk a little bit less because there's more dialogue or whatever. I don't necessarily mind playing games that are uncharacteristic for me. So, for instance, Cyberpunk would count as a fairly uncharacteristic game for me. What I do mind, though, is playing games in a way that is, I guess, sort of indistinguishable from how I... like how I would just sort of play on my own. So, like, the one thing I don't want to do is, like, turn on a stream and play something in silence and, you know, sit down for half an hour and not even just really make a move because I want to sort of think through it or something like that. Or, you know, sitting down and not that I usually read wikis on games, but like actually a great example of this would be Dominions, right? So if I'm gonna play something like Dominions, I'd probably be sitting down with the instruction manual, figuring out how the game works first, and then taking a turn. And that's just not interesting for people. So the challenge is that if the side quests don't hold water, or at the very least if they're not as compelling as the main story, I kind of get it. I've definitely heard from a few people, they're kind of annoyed when streamers start stuff but don't finish it. One little bit of insight I can offer on that. I am lucky in the sense that, I would be sad to see the number of viewers, fall or go to zero. But my livelihood does not rely on it, right? So, like the idea of, the idea of like, oh, this game wasn't popular, so I'm not gonna do it. Like, that's not as heavy of an influence for me. But it is fair to say, if people don't show up for a particular game multiple times, that is a little bit of a signal that people are maybe not necessarily enjoying it. And of course, for every game, there's going to be a small number of people who, at least a small number of people, who tremendously enjoy it. Maybe means the world to them. Like, some of the stuff that people think is ridiculous will have very devoted followers, right? The world is full of lots of different people with very different tastes and experiences. So I appreciate it when people say they don't like it when streamers start things but don't finish them. But the thing is that it's like playing. So for my experience, my own experience, I generally try to play stuff for the first time on stream, because I think sometimes if there's something really surprising, it's nice to have that genuine reaction. Cyberpunk's a little bit different here, because as you can see, I've got a Streetkid, which is a bit further than my main character here. But even then, I've tried to keep as close as I can to the stuff that I've already done for this character. I have made a couple of exceptions, mostly just because it's stuff that's already been talked about, so there's no real surprises there. But, for the most part, I'm kind of seeing this stuff for the first time. And of course, the trade-off for that is, much like games that we play in the real world, not everything is going to hit quite the same way. And it may be that, you've got what you've wanted out of the experience. I think in the case of Darkest Dungeon, there's something like 15-20% of players, if that, had actually played all the way through to the end. And that was known by the developers at the time that they made Darkest Dungeon 2. But they weren't particularly bothered by that, because in the end they would just make the proposition, hey, remember that stuff you really liked about that first game? Well, we're going to give you a little bit more of that. And playing the game through to the end does not, it's not a requirement to enjoy the follow-up. It's also not a requirement for it to be a good game, right? Like, lots of people love Baldur's Gate. I've talked to very few people who have ever played a Baldur's Gate game to the end. Does that mean Baldur's Gate is not a good game? I mean, sure, I can claim that, but man, like, if you want to talk about hot takes, Baldur's Gate isn't good is certainly qualifies as that. It's just because people don't finish it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a good game or that they didn't get something out of it. So, with that in mind, I'm conscious of the fact that not everything I play is necessarily going to be enjoyable, although for the most part I like most of the stuff that I play. May not have the time, or there may not be sufficient interest to play stuff all the way through. But likewise, on stream, not every game necessarily merits playing every single side mission. And if it definitely feels like the game is sort of padding itself with some of the side missions, I'm not necessarily going to do all of them on broadcast, because in the end, there's other stuff that I can be doing. Oh, tarot card. So yeah, that's one of the sort of the driving forces behind some of those calls. But I don't know, like in the end, like, spontaneous craving satisfaction machine. All right, where's this card? Wheel of Fortune. The Wheel of Fortune means that change is coming. One's destiny could turn out for better or worse, yet it also bears the promise of new possibilities. The wheel reminds us that nobody remains at the top forever, but also that not every situation is hopeless. Okay. We'll work out a little bit of a game plan for the next missions. Again, there's never a promise that Cyberpunk's going to be the next game for next week, because I do want to get back to Against the Storm, but we've got, looks like, 2 more Badlands gigs. Probably going to avoid Hacking the Hacker and Agent Saboteur for a bit. Definitely want to pick up the... we'll probably actually pick up the Gift with El Capitan. Can't do Beat on the Brat if it says very high. That's a high. Jesus. Maybe the Cyber Psychos in the city center, but if my gig is very high, I may want to resist going after those. Yeah, so maybe Pacifica. Like if the Badlands, if we're done with the Badlands, maybe I try Pacifica before I do more in Santo Domingo. Anyways, neither here nor there. In terms of vehicles, 71. Jesus, this is too early in the morning for this nonsense. 71 plus 52, that's 123. 123 plus 35 is 158. 158 plus 77 is 230. I said 8, 135. 99. Wait, was it 135 or 235? Damn it. Let's try that again. 71 plus 52, that's 123. 123 plus 35 is 156. Wait a minute. 71. Yeah, 123. 158. Yeah, so it was 2. Did they say 158? I hope so. 220. Nope, 235. Uh, 334. 375. Yeah, so you need 375,000 eddies, or thereabouts, because I'm absolutely not in a position. If I can't remember a number after three attempts, you know, let's not rely too heavily on that math. But yeah, I need a lot in terms of jobs, and if that last one paid about 8K, I probably don't have enough gigs left to be able to. Well, I don't know. Like maybe there's like 200 gigs in the game, in which case, great. But yeah, I'm gonna guess that I probably need to find other sources of money. But all of that will be dealt with in a future episode. So thank you everybody for watching. I have a few things to get through. So obviously there's whatever I'm getting through tonight. I will be back for Terra Invicta on Monday. Wednesday, I'm going to do... Wednesday, I'm going to be back to Phantom Brigade, having a great time with that. And as always, Friday is sort of the free day. I'm not opposed to doing more Cyberpunk, but as always, it sort of depends on my mood. I am really in the mood for more Against the Storm, and and I'm hoping that my life will have calmed down a bit in terms of just getting stuff done. I'm going to host W. Shan. I don't know how much longer Will Shan, sorry. I don't know how much longer he's going to be streaming for tonight, but he's the best available. So I hope you all have a lovely weekend. Thank you for sticking with me during a somewhat mixed stream. Yeah, take care. Get some sleep for those of you who are feeling like I do. And we will see you in the future.